Welcome everyone to episode 23 of Ty's Training, Talking with My Dad. This is the week of June 23rd, 2025. I'm Ty, and here as always with my wonderful co-host and father, Mr. Tim Andrews, aka Mr. C. I like this shirt. We got summertime vibes here, and we are looking here for another week of training and life ahead of our continuation of Project Himalaya. We have more and more to talk about, but yeah, it's been a great week, a busy week for me. Mr. C, how's it been over there? Warm, I see, with the shirt.
Great, very warm and sunny. Pretty nice week this week. And now in the U.S., we're done for the week because it's the 4th of July tomorrow. Can hear the fireworks going off already.
Yep. We are a few days behind schedule here because I was in Colorado all of last week, into early this week, and then had a kind of extra little bonus day thanks to American Airlines pushing my flight back to an impossible. I had like a negative 2-hour connection, and they were like, "We don't think you're going to make this." It's like, "Yep, I think you're right." So I ended up in.
Did we tell you about the owl?
The owl?
Yeah,
No.
We have an enormous owl that's hanging around. He went. He even had a drink in our pond last night. I mean, he is,
Wow.
ginormous. Yeah.
All right. We'll have to get some pictures of that for our bird enthusiast listeners. See if we can identify it. Or did you already identify it?
Spectacular beast. It really is cool. Mm-hmm.
Do you know what kind of owl it is?
I believe are they called barred owls? The ones with the sunken eyes?
With the spooky faces? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's a barred owl.
That's what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. At the end, if you want,
right.
I can see if I can share my screen and I can show you some pictures.
Send it over.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right. Get us through the numbers and let's get started.
Yeah, so last week was it's kind of a crazy week with a lot of travel, a lot of like awesome stuff. It was a lot of runs with big groups of people for La Sportiva. I was visiting their store in Boulder, and then up at the Leadville race series doing a run up there, and we had some film screenings and got to run with a good friend of mine, Ryan Hall, who we talked about. He came to visit down in Ecuador, and we kind of buddied up and went to visit him up in Crested Butte and had a really nice long day through the mountains together on Sunday. So yeah, overall though,
Awesome.
108 kilometers, 7,300 meters of vert in about 18 and a half hours. So yeah, for a day that, spanned, I think it was like 6 or 7 different hotel rooms in 6 or 7 days. Like, I'll take that. It's pretty solid. So yeah, it was definitely a tiring trip, but a really good trip, and happy to finally be home now.
Great. Okay. Shall we get started then?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I have been wanting to ask you this because you mentioned several times, and we talked a couple times on the phone about your ribs. So you said it was very sore, and we talked about it a little bit last week. So where are you with that injury, and how's it affecting your training?
Yeah, so if you missed last week's episode, I really underplayed it because I think it had just happened and it really wasn't that bad yet. But basically, I was doing this cool route up on Ruku on our mountains here, and there's one piece where it's kind of like a little vertical, it's like, I don't know, 6 feet, 2 meters, and you just kind of have to pull yourself up and do a little pull up and then kind of slide onto your chest or stomach and then lift your legs up, kind of like you're hopping over a fence. And I was doing that, and I kind of let all of my weight down, slipped a little bit, and I had my running vest on, and I landed on my left side and basically sandwiched something in my running vest, like into my rib cage with a lot of force. And it really, really hurt in the moment. And I was like, oh, that's not good. And I've broken ribs before. I don't think it was broken, but it was bad enough that I was like, ow, that really hurt. But also like I was able to do the rest of the run fine. And then like over the next couple of days, I just felt almost like it got worse. And I don't know if that's because I kept training on it or if something about the movement, whatever, it just got worse over the next couple of days. And that was really kind of like the defining thing for me last week was like rib injuries are the worst because there's really nothing you can do about them. It's super uncomfortable. You can take some ibuprofen and some Tylenol, and I was doing that, but I'm a side sleeper, so even just getting through the night, it was really uncomfortable. Like every time I was rolling over, it was really sore. Even just doing any kind of exercise where I was, doing anything kind of off balance, that was really uncomfortable. So it was really a pretty big problem. The other thing I noticed was anytime I took a really deep breath, like a full breath, it was really, really uncomfortable. So I tried to do a workout early last week and just kind of called it off halfway through. So it's like, I'm not able to get my heart rate high enough because I like can't, my body is like limiting my ability to breathe in because this is so painful. So I kind of shut down the whole week. And I mean, I still had a decent week, like we said, with the numbers, but it was really pretty chill, like mostly just easy miles, because yeah, it was just really, really uncomfortable. And there's nothing you can do but just let it heal and try and be patient, which, I'm not good at. So the good
Yeah.
news is now, I'd say it's almost entirely better. I haven't been taking ibuprofen or anything for the last couple of days, and it's still there. It's still a little bit sore. Like when I wake up in the morning, especially if I sleep on it, it's still a little bit sore, but I don't feel like it's impacting my ability to run it all now, which is really nice because that was,
Good.
it was a little bit frustrating because I just felt like, I was kind of trying to like muscle my way back into shape. And then all of a sudden this happened. And I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Like, especially right before this big trip. And even last week, I think we talked about, I was thinking about still potentially running the Leadville Marathon, and that just did not happen. Like after that workout went so poorly, I was just like, no, there's no way that I can go do a race right now. I felt like I could go, jog around easy with my friends, but going and racing hard on a hilly course just seemed like a really bad idea. And, going back to our list, it's like, don't get greedy. It's June. Doesn't matter at this point. So yeah, it was, I was bummed to skip the race and bummed to just like feel like garbage, but, I'm glad now to be, knock on wood, hopefully mostly on the other side of it.
Glad to hear it. Yeah. It's always frustrating when you have those kind of injuries that just, there's nothing you can do but wait. And they're annoying all the time because they're, it's like having an injury on a finger that you use all the time, like a thumb or something. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're doing better. Okay.
Thank you.
Second question from me is, so thermal training has it's become a real theme for you, like, dressing up like a homeless person or whatever, just putting layers and layers and layers of clothes on. So, and doing treadmill and bike with no ventilation and all these layers on. So what's behind all this? And are you trying to make yourself, cooked well done, or is there some more to it?
Part of it was literally just getting ready to go back to Colorado in the summertime. I knew it was going to be really hot. And it was there. It was like over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Boulder.
Wow.
Even when we did our run, it was like 95 degrees Fahrenheit at like 6:30 p.m. But anyways, yeah. So part of it was just that, like getting the body a little bit ready. And the other, we've talked about before on this pod, like in a while ago, is this idea of basically just using the thermal stimulus and the body's reaction to increase heart rate as a way to almost like save the legs from a from a musculoskeletal perspective. So you're able to work at a higher heart rate at a slower pace. So it's less impact on the legs, it's less impact on the muscles, but you're able to get a nice cardio stimulus that way. So I find that can be helpful in general, and like especially right now, kind of just getting back into shape, and with a big trip, not a big trip, but a trip to the States in the middle of summertime. It seemed like a good idea, and especially on the bike, it's always been something I do, and I always overdress on the bike just because the bike is one where I don't want to develop muscular endurance for bicycling. Like that's not something that I care about. It's not something that I do competitively. So if anything, it's, the last thing I want to do is like develop like humongous monster bike quads or something that like I don't need, and you're just weighing you down when you're out running in the mountains.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good reminder, because I have done this. I learned from you, and because I have a little tendonitis, iliotibial band tendonitis from time to time if I go too aggressively on the elliptical even. And so if I can go slower, if you get below a certain rate, then my knee doesn't hurt. And so I discovered, oh yeah, I can put like, some warmer clothes on, and then I can get into, the kind of zone 2 training at lower RPMs on the elliptical, and my knee doesn't hurt. So I have to remember
Exactly.
that.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good one. Yep.
Okay, great. So on Tuesday, your planned Polacheski fartlek didn't go very well. You mentioned your heart rate was unusually low, pace was slow, and I think the words you used were you were feeling sorry for yourself. So what was going through your head at that point? And what does that tell you about where you are in your training plan?
Luckily, I don't think it tells me that much about where I am. Honestly, I mean, this is the same. I just mentioned this workout, like with regards to the rib injury stuff, and I think it was
Hmm.
mostly that in retrospect. At the time, again, it hadn't been bothering me that much, but I also hadn't tried to do anything hard yet. So I think it was just too much with that injury. I think my ventilation just wasn't working the way it's supposed to, and my body was just like, no, I don't want to do this. Everything sucks, and
Yeah.
so it's I don't know. I feel like for me sometimes these early season workouts and I know what we're talking about kind of like transitions and early season stuff on the cooldown, so I won't spoil that. But I feel like for me it's just really hit or miss. Like sometimes, like this past season, um, I just started firing on all cylinders pretty much right out of the gate, and I felt amazing, and all my times are really good. And I was like, "Oh, this is amazing! This is great." And then there's some seasons where it's like this, and that first few weeks just feels like garbage. And I think this is just like zooming out, it just seems to be more of the latter. I think that it was a really hard spring season, really long, intense, and now it's I'm just trying to give myself some grace and be patient with that. And I've got plenty of time. I'm still I'm pleased with even the minimal progress I've seen over the last few weeks, and mostly I just I feel better about my recovery and energy level and all that stuff. So really, it was a bad workout. I was tired. I was hurt, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And you try to just shake it off and say, okay, this isn't a huge deal. It's not like an indicator of my fitness entirely. It's really more of just a reflection of how I was feeling on that day. And yeah, we move on.
Yep. Yep. Okay. And in that same zone, I don't know if you want to add more, but you abandon the afternoon workout and your
Yeah.
plyometrics, and
Yeah.
that's knowing you. We talked about your difficulty with being patient. So how do you balance the need for patience and or versus pushing through the discomfort, and recognizing when you need some rest?
It's a hard distinction sometimes. This one was not hard because I could tell just that I was injured. I had a problem with my body. And my number one rule with when I put my coaching hat on and I'm talking to the athletes that I work with is if whatever little thing is bothering you is impacting your gait, it's impacting your mechanics, anything like that, then stop, don't do it. Because that's a really good way to get other injuries and get into like the whole injury cycle and spiral. And that's what we really, really want to avoid. So, if I just gone out there and felt kind of tired and it had been slow, that's one thing. But when I go out there and I'm like, okay, my body just does not feel right mechanically. This is not going well. That's where you just have to be like, okay, then I can't force this. The body has to be ready for the work. And if it's not ready, this is a really obvious for me, like blinking red light, red flag, whatever metaphor you want to use, that it's just not ready to work hard. And going and trying to do another workout, or especially like plyometrics, which are really explosive, for me, that's going to accomplish the opposite. It's probably going to set me back farther. It's going to make the injury last longer, which is the last thing I want to do. I want to get back to training and feeling good. And, when I'm in a situation like that, it's like, okay, am I doing this workout just to satisfy my ego in this very moment on this day, or am I doing this because this is the appropriate thing that's going to get me feeling the best and the fittest in the medium to long term? And that's the most
Uh-huh.
important thing. So in this case, it was super obvious. Some cases it's harder, but this was a day where I was like, cool, yeah, I'm going to go like for a walk in the forest and stretch, and like that's going to be my afternoon.
Okay. Hmm. Well, good. I'm glad it's clear. It's easier when it's clear like that, I'm sure. Hmm.
Yep.
So then after that, you went on the whirlwind trip you discussed briefly. So tell us about a little bit about your plan for that trip and how you had originally at least planned to incorporate training during your travel.
I'd kind of penciled it in as a down week, light week anyways, because my experience has been, especially a trip like this where it's a lot of different places, I have a lot of commitments, I'm running with other people. It's just really hard to get in any kind of really structured training. Like sometimes it's fine, and sometimes you're just doing stuff all day. And for me, if I have something written on the calendar, then it's like, oh, I will be really disappointed in myself if I don't do that. So it's better to go in with low expectations and just kind of say, hey, whatever I get in, I get in. And so that was kind of my plan training wise for the trip. I mean, yeah, like I said, I think I was literally in a different hotel every single night. And we had an event in Boulder, which was great at the La Sportiva store. And then we had the event at Leadville, which is, a couple hours drive. And then I was in Crested Butte, which is another couple hours out. So just a lot of moving around, a lot of moving parts. But I was actually really pleased with how it held up. It's like, I still felt like I got in a good amount of training. I got to run with a lot of really awesome people who I don't see regularly. A lot of new people who came out to some of the group
Nice.
runs. So yeah, it was super cool. And
Yeah.
honestly, I love being in like a race environment, whether I'm racing or not. It's really cool to be able to be a part of that. I mean, so many times I've been at a race as a competitor in the race, and so it's kind of fun now being at races where you're not racing. It's just you get to enjoy the ambiance and kind of
Yeah.
reminisce on that feeling of pressure and intensity and all these things. And but you don't actually have to do it. You just get to watch other people do it, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Okay, and you mentioned earlier that the run at Boulder and Boulder in general was brutally hot, and you mentioned that even during the time of the run it was over 90 degrees. So how
Yeah.
did you hold up, and how did it go, and how was the screening?
Yeah, I actually felt fine, and I was honestly a little bit nervous just because of how bad my like rib cage thing had felt a couple days earlier. But I think I
Uh-huh.
took a really light day, the day that I was traveling, and I think just that combined with like a couple days rest and healing, it felt pretty good. The heat felt really nice, honestly. I like heat when I'm like ready for it, and I'd been in Massachusetts with you guys where it was a little warm, and done some of my kind of like pre-heat training here in keto with layers and everything. So yeah, I thought it was really nice. It's funny, I've been to Colorado like a bunch of times now, but I'd actually never done a single run in Boulder. Like every time I've been going to Boulder, it's been for like, visiting the Sportiva headquarters or the store or something like that. And it's usually just I'm there and then I'm leaving. And it was really nice to see some of their trails. They're really beautiful, and super accessible from at least the part of the town that we were at. But yeah, my goodness, during the middle of the day, I went for a walk with my buddy Brian, and it was well over 100 degrees at like 3 or 4 o'clock. I was like, oh my God, I'm melting. It's so hot
Wow.
here.
Is
And
that
even, yeah, even
normal?
in,
Because I guess I think
I
of
think
Boulder
that's,
as pretty high up in the mountains, so you don't think of it as
well,
getting that
no, it's
hot.
not that high. Yeah, Denver and Boulder get really hot in the summertime. I mean, even in Leadville, it was like in the mid to high 70s, which is super hot for Leadville. So I
Mhm.
think it was just a heat wave. It was the same heat wave that was hitting
Ah,
the East Coast probably. But yeah, it was warm. It was nice to get up to the big mountains, or bigger mountains, higher altitude towns, where it was a little bit cooler.
mhm. And how did the, film screening, the Manaslu screening go at Boulder?
It was great. Yeah. I think that one of the things that's really nice is, the Colorado and probably even the Boulder audience in particular is really knowledgeable. So I think they came knowing probably a little bit both about me and also just about the mountains, about 8,000-meter climbing. Like people asked really good questions. We probably did like an hour of questions after the film.
Wow.
And people were asking really, really good, thoughtful questions. It wasn't just kind of fluff. So that was really fun. I had a really good time. I even hung around and chatted with some guys after for a while, just one-on-ones. Yeah, it was really, really, I hope it was well received. I got some good feedback, and yeah, people asked really good questions, which is, for me, always, always a blast. I love to talk.
Great, great.
Like
And then,
father,
of
like son.
course, you went to Leadville, as you were just discussing. Even Leadville was warm, which is 10,000 feet up, and where
Yep.
the Leadville races all are that run all summer of various types, culminating in the Leadville 100. So, you've got strong feelings, I know, maybe not all positive about Leadville, given some of the events that have happened there. Um, but tell us again about that event and what it was like to be there in Leadville again. And how is
Yeah,
Mitch?
Leadville hold. Yeah, Mitch is great. I saw Mitch.
Good.
Yeah, he's a guy, local guy who I've stayed in his house for like weeks on end for a couple of training blocks ahead at the Leadville 100, over the last like 5 or 6 years when I was training for that race.
Super
He's a
nice
really good
guy.
guy, really good dude. And yeah, it was awesome. I mean, I honestly, it feels good for me to go back to Leadville. I do have really mixed feelings about it when I think objectively, but like I would say the overwhelming vibe for me is positive, which is kind of interesting because like especially like with recency bias, the last time I was there, my crew was in for Leadville 100 was in a really bad car accident, and one of my close friends and professional runner Pete Kostelnik, who was there to pace me in the race, he was in a wheelchair for like a few months after that, and it took him
Yeah, it
probably
was terrible.
8 or 12 months to get back to even any kind of running. So Pete's also just a great dude. Y'all should go give him a follow. He's probably the most underappreciated and talented athlete out there. He holds the record for running across the United States, the entire United States. He ran from San Francisco to New York, averaging 70 miles a day for 40 something days.
That's
yeah, just
amazing.
an unbelievably tough dude. But yeah, so that was kind of my last memory of Leadville, was that whole fiasco happening, and just that was a really particularly bad summer. And I had like a really messy breakup going on at the time. It was just everything kind of, it was not good. And I feel like that race still for me feels like one where I have a lot of unfinished business. I would like to go back there and give it another shot some year. It kind of keeps getting in the way with between UTMB or fall Himalayan season, but I do think I've got a lot of strengths to which that race caters, in terms of it being, kind of for me at relatively low altitude, but for most people that's kind of the crux. And it's also really runnable. It's a flat-ish course with just a couple decent climbs. So yeah, I'd love to go back there. I think my best finish was fourth. I was fourth there in 2022, I think, or three. But yeah, I think it's definitely one where I'd like to go back to. But it's just a place that I've spent a lot of time there. I spent probably multiple 2 to 3 week stints up there just training on the course, getting to know it. Sometimes living at Mitch's house, sometimes sleeping in the back of a U-Haul van up at that pass across from the molybdenum mine to like get a little bit of extra altitude.
Right.
Sleeping up at whatever it was, like 3,500 meters. Get another couple thousand feet up there. So yeah, it's a really cool town. And it's always fun to see just, at this point, I know a lot of people who live in the town and who, are part of the race series and stuff. So I'm glad, La Sportiva is the title sponsor of the race series. So they have a big presence there, and it just worked out really well for me to be there this weekend, and yeah, a lot of fun to be back.
Great. And then you went from Leadville to Crested Butte, where you went to visit Ryan and Sarah Hall, who certainly most runners know who they are. And so that was great fun, I'm sure. And you went for a big long run with Ryan, so which is kind of surprising given that just a couple of days before that you were like, I can't even move, I can't even breathe, my ribs hurt so much. So tell us about that big loop with Ryan.
It was, we first of all, it was just really good to see those guys. Well, Sarah unfortunately wasn't there, so it was Ryan and his daughters, and his two dogs, which was a lot of fun. All of us in his condo, and I basically got there and he like started pulling out the maps and he's like got all these ideas, and I'm like, look, dude, here's the thing, like at this point, it had been a week since that injury, and I was feeling a lot better. But what there were two things I was like, I need to avoid. I need to avoid anything that's like really hard, like just again from the breathing perspective, and then anything that's really technical and scrambly, because what I really didn't want to do would be like using my hands a lot and pulling. That was still kind of a problem. But I was like, if we keep it chill and we're just kind of hiking and jogging, like I could do that all day. So yeah, we did this loop. I guess it's kind of a famous loop out there called Four Passes. So you go up and over 4 big mountain passes, and make a big kind of lollipop loop out in the Elk Range. Really, really beautiful. It was like full on wildflower season out there. So everything is super green. Beautiful. And then you have these really bright pinks, purples, yellows everywhere. Just unbelievably gorgeous. And yeah, it was just a really fun like adventure day together. We kept it pretty chill, left just before sunrise, so we got to a little bit of an alpine start in the dark, and just absolutely perfect day. It was like not too hot, not too cold, just enjoying ourselves being out there. I think a lot of the time training wise, we're so focused on the like hitting the split or hitting the right energy zone or whatever it is. And this was really a day of just like, hey, if we wanted to like stop and like dip our feet in the stream or smell the flowers, literally, like we're just going to do that. And so, yeah, awesome. I think it was, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours overall, but it was a really, really fun day, really beautiful. And then, we went and got a bunch of Thai food afterwards, which is always good. So it was, it was great to hang out and great to just like see a big loop on new part of the country. Like I've never been there, out in that part of Colorado before. Crested Butte is incredibly beautiful. Mountains are amazing. And it's really like in the middle of nowhere. Like Leadville is already kind of in the middle of nowhere. And then you drive like 2.5 hours away from Leadville, even more into the middle of nowhere. So it's I can see why Ryan and Sarah fell in love with that place, because it is really quiet. It doesn't have kind of like the uppity vibes of maybe like an Aspen. It's still just kind of like a chill, like family based mountain town, but it's just unbelievably beautiful. And there's just
It's a
a
very famous ski
absolute
resort.
yeah, so there's a really big ski resort in the winter, and so they own this place and they rent it out in the winter, and then they just go in the summer, because
I see.
the trail net the network of hiking and trail running there is just unbelievable now. Like we
Yeah.
touched like 1/1000th of 1% of the trails in this area, and there's Ryan's telling me, oh, I've been on that one and this one, and I've done this ridge to that thing, and it's like, oh yeah, I can see why you're here, man.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds great. Okay. Great. So a good week overall, it sounds like then.
Yeah, it was a really good trip.
Hmm. Great. Okay. So now when you're dealing with things like the rib injury and you get setbacks like this, it's sort of one step forward, two steps forward, one step back. How do you maintain confidence in your preparation and your timeline? And I think, just to make sure we dot the I and cross the T, how are you feeling now?
Yeah, I think, well, to answer the second part of the question first, right now, I'd say it feels like almost 100%. It feels good enough that I don't think it's impacting any of my exercise, I would say. It's still like if I poke on it, I can tell it's there, or if I sneeze or something, I can feel it a little bit. But in terms of training, I'd say it's impacting me zero, which is great. The longer part of the question about, how do we deal with, confidence and the timeline and preparation, I think it goes back to what I was saying before about this idea of, how you respond immediately. You really have to step away from the ego and the in the moment of, oh my gosh, I really have to get this workout done today, and think about what is the best thing to get me back to 100% as quickly as possible. And I remember you and I talked about this a lot, like when I was in Kare and I got super sick, and
Yep.
you have this desire to go out and prove that, oh, I'm okay and everything is better and I'm feeling good. But in doing that, you might actually end up setting yourself back, which is totally counterproductive. And I think it's the
Yep.
same thing with any kind of injury like this, where you really have to zoom out and be like, okay, why am I doing this training or this this piece of preparation today, and doesn't make sense in the context of actually having a small injury or a major injury or anything like that. Am I just going to try and prove something to myself, or does this make sense? And is this the thing that's going to get me back to 100% the quickest? Because that's the real goal at the end of the day, and you can't
Yep.
lose sight of that. So, if you can find ways to work with an injury. So in this case for me, I found, like walking uphill on the treadmill when I was like stuck in Miami, like that was something that was fine for me to do. It didn't bother it. There's no jarring. I wasn't breathing that deeply. So that's something I can do and be like, okay, I'm still, I'm getting my gentle aerobic stimulus like I normally would. That's great. And I don't feel like I'm doing anything that's going to set me back. And then even those easy runs in Colorado, it felt like, okay, now it feels good enough that I can go run on some trails, and that feels good, but I'm not pushing. So you're kind of looking at it both on, okay, I'm trying not to lose too much fitness. I'm trying not to lose too much time on my calendar, but at the same time, I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing every single thing I can every single day to just get back as quickly as possible. So the focus really has to shift from, the workouts that I've written or your coach has written or whomever to just rehab and, okay, what can I do? How can I get back as quickly as possible? Because then you're back on the calendar, and now you can start thinking weeks and months ahead and start, sometimes you need to rejigger the map a little bit and change some stuff and ease back into it. But at the end of the day, you want to be back to 100% so that you're not thinking about, okay, what workouts can I do with this injury? You're just thinking about, I'm just going to train now, and now I'm ready to go,
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. And one last really important question about that. Have you rearranged what you put in the pockets of your vest?
Not really, because I only have so many pockets. You got to have stuff in there. So I think it's more just, being cognizant of that. And trying not to fall. I mean,
Maybe you could stuff like a little, bubble wrap or rubber foam cushioning
I
or
don't know
something.
how much that would help. I mean, here's the thing, like, even if you didn't have anything and you fell and you like landed on your chest, which you often do, or on your hand, like usually Superman, when you take a
Yeah,
fall trail running, because
yeah,
the most common thing is you'll catch your toe on something and
yeah,
splay forward, and then you land,
yeah,
hands, elbows, chest, like that's usually what gets it. And when I've broken
yeah.
ribs in the past, it's been from that. So yeah, it was a stupid thing. I don't really know that there's anything you could do. Like, you're not going to go around wearing pads. That's ridiculous. So, like, just, you be careful and you accept that every once in a while you're going to take a digger and hopefully it's not too bad.
Okay. hmm Okay. So finally, last question. You're back in keto now. So what's the best part about being home?
Oh, gosh. I mean, selfishly, just being able to unpack my bag fully. Like do laundry and like cook in my own kitchen, and like that part is really nice. I'm definitely like a creature of habit and routine, and again, I love traveling. I love being able to see different parts of the world and friends all over the world, but at the same time, it was a tiring trip, and so just being able to come home and have food in my fridge now and my clothes put away, like that feels really nice. And just not having to like do like multiple hours of driving every day. There's so much driving on this trip. I know I'm complaining, but
Yeah.
it was a lot of driving.
Colorado's a big state.
It's a big state, yeah. And then I think the other thing that's really nice is just like being able to see my friends here. Like, this place does really feel like home. I've got a lot of close friends here, and as soon as I got back, people are texting me, hey, like, come over now and we're having dinner. And I'm gonna go probably next weekend out to some mountains with some friends. So yeah, just being able
Nice.
to kind of be a part of the community here, I think is really wonderful for me. And that's always, it does feel like coming home here. I feel like I have a lot of places like that feel like coming home, and this is definitely one of them.
Great. Okay. I'm out of questions for this week. Anything you want to add?
No, I think we got it. So we'll cut there and come back for our cool down.
Okay. Okay, and we're back for the cool down section. So this week we're going to talk about the transition between seasons and training blocks. So take us through it, Tyler. You're about a month out now from this massive season in the Himalayas focused on Mount Everest, and now you're turning your focus to the UTMB race in France at the end of August. So how do you mentally process and put closure on this enormous effort you put into the Himalayas and Everest, and then shift your focus to the next big goal?
So I have a couple different kind of scales of things here. So I think when we talk about the immediate aftermath from any really big effort, whether it's trying to go up Mount Everest or running a marathon or an ultra or a 1 mile race, whatever it is, I always try to give myself a couple of days to basically just feel whatever I'm going to feel, and not try and problem solve, not try and like process anything logically, but just, if it goes really great, awesome, cool, I'm celebrating with my friends. If I went super poorly and I'm really disappointed, it's, I let myself feel sad and bummed and disappointed, because I think it's important to have those feelings and not just bottle them up and, stow them away somewhere. I think you don't want to get caught up in them, but that's why I think that first like 24 to 48 hours after any really big effort, you don't want to think logically, which is hard for me. You just want to like feel the feelings, don't worry about it, don't future plan, and just do that.
Yeah.
Then for me, at least, I tend to switch pretty quickly into problem solving or post-mortem, whatever you want to call it, but that kind of logical, retrospective, that happens for me very naturally. Whether it goes really well or whether it goes poorly, is my first inclination is, okay, what could I have done differently? What could I have done better? What went really well? What went poorly? And I will literally write those things down in my notebook or in my training log, things like that. And that's often a very cathartic process for me, especially if it's a disappointing race or objective like Everest was for me, where it didn't go the way that I wanted to. I'm not wrapping up the season the way that I'd hoped for. So it's really important for me to look at that objectively after I'm done kind of feeling all the big feelings, and just thinking, okay, what could I have actually done differently here? Like, what are the things that, if I want to do this again, we're going to do differently next time, or that we have to control for, as well as, again, even with a disappointing season, looking at what went really well. Like let's highlight those things. Let's give yourself a pat on the back for that, because, just because the race doesn't go well doesn't mean that you can't have done a lot of things really, really well in the preparation and the training side.
Right.
And for me, that's often a really helpful way to kind of like swallow that bitter pill of, hey, it didn't go, but some of it went well, excuse me. And we're going to use what we learned here, and we're going to do a better job next time with whatever we do, whether it's exactly the same thing, another marathon or another attempt on Mount Everest, or if it's something completely different. There's always lessons that we can take from what we just did towards whatever the next thing is. So that's kind of like phase 2, I guess. And then phase 3 is I just like really try to disassociate from any kind of like really intense goal-oriented stuff. I try to hang out with my friends, see my family, go eat sushi in Tokyo, like whatever it is, but just something completely mentally separate from that, because I don't want to like totally obsess over it. I want to give myself some space before we start thinking about the next big thing. I've said to my athletes, and I think about this myself, I think you really want to feel hungry at the beginning of a season. And if you go right from one thing to the next, you're not going to have that. So I think that's a really big part of it, is just setting yourself up, giving yourself that mental and physical break so that you can get into the next season feeling really, really ready to go and fired up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think especially giving yourself some time for closure. A lot of people give themselves time for the opposite of closure, for getting ready, for preparing, for opening up a season, but they don't think about closing the season as much. And that's a really good
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Well, I think that we, like as endurance athletes, we spend so much energy in that season, not just on race day or FKT day or whatever you want to call it, but there's so much like long-term focus, I would say. It's not the same as focus as, a golf player hitting a golf club or a baseball player hitting a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, but it's the long-term focus of every single day getting out, doing all the training, the long runs, the workouts, the little things, getting all your sleep. Like there's just so much that goes into it. And it is like mentally fatiguing at the end of the day to have to do that. And so it's almost like a little mini vacation that you're giving yourself of, okay, I'm just, I'm not going to worry about what time I go to bed. I'm not going to worry about what I'm eating today. I'm not going to worry about if my run is 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 2 hours. I'm just going to do the stuff that I like to do and have fun. And it's kind of like a hedonistic thing. And, I've actually used this. There's a term called Rumspringa, which is, do you know what Rumspringa is, Mr. C? So Rumspringa is in Amish culture, when the kids are like 18, or maybe they're like 16, whatever, they're like late teenagers, and the Amish send these kids out into the non-Amish world to like New York City or something, for like a year, maybe even 2 years, to basically just go experience, quote unquote, modern civilization. And it's called Rumspringa, and there's no rules, and these kids just go out and they do whatever they want. And then at the end of that, they get to decide whether they want to continue being Amish or they want to go do their own thing. And so I kind of think of these like little breaks as my little like Rumspringers, where it's like, okay, I get to go pretend to be a normal person for a little while. But the funny thing is that almost like the vast majority of those Amish kids come back and choose to still be Amish, which I think is pretty interesting. And and for me, it's the same thing. It's like I have fun. I'm a hedonist for a few weeks. And then very quickly, I'm like, yeah, I need to like go back to keto and like train every day and get on the Polichowski and stuff, And so, but it feels like you're making a choice to go do this thing because, you want to go do it. And I think that's a really important thing to have in the back of your mind as you're getting into training. And especially as you get into the heavier training where it's like, hey, I'm here because I want to do this and I made this choice myself,
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, there's a tricky balance, as always, when you're going through these big projects. For anybody who's worked on big projects, and most of us who work for a living at some level have these kind of big project experiences you go through. There's always this, how much do you celebrate the success versus how much do you avoid being complacent about resting on your laurels is often the term that gets used, or something like that. So in other words, how do you celebrate and honor the incredible efforts and everything that happened in the Nepal while still maintaining that uh, hunger and that drive that you want for taking on the next set of challenges.
I think it's a lot easier when, you don't get the thing, when the project doesn't go well. I think it's harder. It's harder when things go perfectly, that's where you can, I think, get complacent and maybe rest on your laurels a little bit. I don't know. I mean, I think looking back, my fall season was really, really objectively successful last year, with Manasu and Ahmad Ablam and a bunch of other records up in the Himalaya. And I think for me, this is exactly what we were just talking about, is that you give yourself kind of a little taste of it. And I think it's person to person, but for me, if I do my little week or two of Rumspringa, then like I'm ready to go. I'm like fully committed to being Amish again after that, like I want to. And, I'm a very goal oriented and like self-motivated person. So maybe that's not the same for everyone. And so it is. That's where I said I think it's different for different people. But for me personally, I've just never had that issue, as much as things going really well is exciting and it's fun to celebrate that. For me, it's always about, okay, what, like I said at the very beginning, what can we learn from this? How can we grow and do something better next time, whether it's again the same exact thing or it's something completely different, going from a big 8,000 meter mountain to a marathon or to a trail race. What lessons can we take from one to use for the other? So for me, it's I've never had that issue, just because I think after my 2 weeks of Rumspringa, I'm like ready to not do that anymore. I think I would just like I enjoy the process so much of training for these things that even if if the record on Everest had gone a month ago, I still think I would be really fired up this summer to go run UTMB, because that's something I'm excited about, and because I love the process of training for these events. I find that really fulfilling and enjoyable. So to me, it's an interesting question. I think some people probably do struggle with that, and I don't have a great answer for that, other than just kind of having, it has to come from inside, and you have to really want to get back into the routine. You have to have something else that's motivating you. And maybe, some people retire from the sport, like they go and do their thing and they're like, okay, I'm good, I'm done. And, you can't force it. You have to want it. And for me, the wanting it, that just has never been a problem.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you have this very strongly, and, the technical term that's been used in the last decade is called a growth mindset. There's been a whole lot of research done around this, and I don't want to go too deep into the weeds, but a lot of us, in fact, I can tell you now, even at my age, it gets you into conflicts at times, because you still feel like you're 20 some, from a thinking perspective and a growth mindset perspective. It's like, well, okay, oh, I could see how I could do this, but it would take 30 years. Oh, wait a minute. I'm in a different state of play when I'm thinking about 30 years, but you still have that desire to say, oh, I want to learn and I want to make the next thing better. Right. And so really, you're talking about growing. You're talking about growth in terms of accumulating new knowledge and trying new things. And I think it's a habit of mind. It's a muscle kind of thing. If you don't keep at it and you don't train it to a certain extent, and you haven't instilled it in your own personal culture, then you can lose it. And a lot of that, part of it boils down to your desire and your passion and those innate things that you have. But part of it is also just that mindset that says, oh, this is really enjoyable, even though it's hard. It's hard fun. So it's, the best fun is generally not the roller coaster ride, just strap me in and let something happen to me. The best fun is building the roller coaster. Oh, look, that was really hard, but I did that. And now look how cool that is, right? So, it's an interesting mindset, and you've got plenty of it. That's for sure. You certainly have that growth mindset. And there are extremes to everything, including growth mindsets, but we'll get into that later.
Sure.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about, you mentioned in your training log setting the bar low after the difficult Tuesday workout where you had to kind of abandon things and your chest was really hurting you, which is sort of the antithesis of your usual approach where you have extremely high standards for all of your workouts, you meticulously plan them and all that kind of stuff. So in these transition periods, how do you forgive yourself, give yourself the space, the grace when your body and mind just aren't where you want them to be, when they aren't firing on all cylinders yet?
In the moment, not very well. I mean, in the moment, I'm definitely still pretty self-critical. I think in the early season stuff, in this early season in particular, I think was harder for a variety of reasons. One was like originally I was supposed to run that Leadville marathon, and that, it wasn't not on my mind. It was on my mind for sure. And I felt like I should have been able to do that. The Everest season went later than I expected, but still I was like, okay, that's a cool race. I'd like to go do it. I've got the course record there. I think I can win it even off of just a few weeks of training. And so that was kind of always in the back of my mind. And I think it was putting more pressure on me than I should have had. In retrospect, yeah. So going back to the question, I'm rambling a little bit. I think transition periods, I think I said this before, and I can't remember if it was in the cool down or in the normal episode, but they're just hit or miss. Sometimes you bounce back really quick. And I think for me, my transitions have generally been like that. Generally been pretty quick, where even if I take, a week or two where I'm really not doing very much at all, that I can really bounce back pretty quick, even if it's kind of a different stimulus, like going from mountaineering to running and that kind of stuff. I just tend to hold my fitness, I think, a little bit better. And I don't need like a huge reintroduction. So this season, I think it was really hard. I think I was just really, really cooked, and I didn't give myself the space and grace that I needed to actually be able to recover. There are times to push and there are times not to push. And we already talked about this one in the context of like, it was really an injury. It wasn't just like fatigue, but even if it,
Yep.
if it were just a workout that was just too hard for my fitness level, early in the season is the time to not push. We always talk about not getting greedy, and early season and then the very end of the season are the two times where you really, really don't want to get greedy. Because at the beginning of the season, you're just kind of getting back into the motions. It's going to take a few weeks or a month to kind of get firing on all cylinders anyways. And the last thing you want to do is squeeze too much and then, you're burnt out in the middle of the season. So I think it's, all these things is so easy to talk about, separated from the event. At the time, you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to do anything. And like, I'm so out of shape and blah, blah, blah. And really it's like in 2 weeks, everything will be fine. And it's not a big deal. But I think if you have that kind of time pressure, it can feel really stressful. And I think that was my big mistake this season, was just, committing to something that was way too early, and not giving myself the space to just kind of let my fitness progress as it will naturally.
Uh-huh. And I have to ask, as a side note, do you still hold the record for that Leadville marathon?
I do. Yeah. That was, I was there to watch the finish. The guy ran really well this year. He soloed like pretty much the whole race, ran from the front. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a local guy from somewhere up in the, I think he was from Salida. But I think he ran about 340. No, maybe 330. 330, I think. 330 something. And I think I ran 323 back in 2022. So it's a really cool course. It's a lot of climbing.
Yeah.
It's a hard
And of course,
course
that
up at
sounds
altitude.
for professional and highly elite runners very slow, but it's at 10,000 feet. So it's actually
And
pretty fast.
it's not even the altitude. It's got like 7,000 feet of climbing or something. It's a lot of
Oh,
climbing.
okay.
It's
So
not,
it's
they
also
call
a
it a
lot of
trail race. It's not a trail race. It's a road race. It's a dirt road race, but it is a lot of climbing, and it's high up. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good mark. I think it could go down a little bit more, because even that one, I remember I ran it the same season. I had just run Vermont City, so that was like less than a month before, and so I was probably in like 219 marathon shape or something. I can't remember which race that was, but I was always running around 219, 220 at Vermont, and then basically just kind of turned it around and did this race like 3 weeks later. So I think you could, that record definitely, it can go down with the right athlete for sure. So that would be cool to see.
Yeah. Okay. So in part of our discussion, it seems to indicate that, and I think this is true for people in general, certainly for me, I feel this, it's easier to manage the physical break than the mental one. Whether it's, just because you feel that intense fatigue and the draining of finishing a big project. And it's sort of obvious when you're physically not doing the things you normally do. You're sleeping
Yeah.
later, you're not running, you're doing things that are physically very different. Um, but mentally, how do you prevent yourself from um, not getting to that mode of, okay, I need to push and I need to push right now? And how do you handle the mental tension that arises during these sort of in between periods in transition?
I think that's the hardest part for me because I've used the analogy before. I sometimes feel like an Iditarod sled dog where I just need to go pull my sled all the time. Like that's all I think about. And it is literally hard for me to take a break and not think about training and not thinking about what am I going to do for exercise today. Even when I talk about taking a break, I will still do something active almost every day just because I will go freaking nuts if I don't do that, whether it's just going to the hotel gym and spinning on the bike for half an hour and watching Netflix, or going for a long walk through a city, or going for a hike with friends, or going for a really easy run, or like whatever it is. But I just can't not be active. I can't just sit on a couch all day and drink beer and watch TV. I just can't do that. I would like explode or something. But I think that is the hardest part. And honestly, for me, I try to set up this time so that there's other things going on that are literally distractions for me. Like I try to set up my room springer perfectly. So it's like, okay, I am spending a lot of time with my family and friends, and I'm in a cool place that I want to go explore in a way that's not like training focused, and, or, whatever it is. I've planned a trip with other people where, training is not an important part of it, but setting myself up in a way that there's a lot of other stuff going on. So it's not just like I'm sitting here in my apartment in keto where all I do here is train. I think that would be a lot harder. It's okay, I'm, after Everest, for example, it's like, okay, I'm in Dubai with some friends, and then I'm in Massachusetts and seeing you guys for a long time. And, I've got all these different plans there, and I'm hanging out with Chosky people. So we have all this different stuff going on, and that's not by accident. It's like 100% by design. And it's literally set up so that I will not just think about training all the time. And it still
Uh-huh.
takes, that, active, control, I would say. It's okay to let myself daydream. I do that. Sure. Okay. Oh, what about this? What about this? What if I did this? What if I did that? But I think the thing that I really try to give myself a break from is this self-imposed pressure and expectation of doing this and not doing this and doing this and not doing this. That's the part that I really try to
Uh-huh.
give myself a break, because I know that that's coming in another few weeks, and that gets old. It gets tiring. It gets tedious at times, even though I love it. Again, this is all a privilege and I love doing it, but it can be draining at times. And so I
Sure.
actively want to say, okay, I'm going to set myself up so that I'm not doing those things. I'm going to do the things that I wouldn't do during training. I'm going to say yes when my friend Greg invites me over at 9 p.m., whatever it is, like things that I would
Mm.
absolutely never do in a training block. I'm going to say yes to those things. And I think you have to set that up in a way that stuff is natural.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's interesting. So you actually arrange your time so that it'll be harder for you to get too obsessed with your normal stuff. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and
And
just
I will
so that
say,
there's more
yep,
opportunities to do fun stuff like that I wouldn't normally
yeah,
do. Because yeah, I'm not just gonna go like wander around Tokyo until 3 o'clock in the morning when it's in the middle of a training block. I know I'm not gonna do that, but at the same time, it's super fun to go do that like once with my friend. So like I want to
yeah.
have those experiences and be able to do it. And it's kind of like I'm like jamming all of this fun hedonistic stuff into like 2 or 3 weeks of the year.
Yep. And I will say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in that um, I really need physical activity almost every day. If I just don't
Yeah.
feel, I mean, not your level of physical activity, but even if it's just walking around the block or walking on the treadmill or getting on the elliptical or whatever it is, playing tennis, I'm a lot better if I have some physical activity at some point, much more than
Yep.
most people, I think. So,
Yep.
so you can blame me for that part. Um, okay, looking back now, so this past month of transition, what have you learned about these transitions? You've just talked about a little bit that if you could talk to Tyler of 10 years ago or 15 years ago, what have you learned that you wish you could tell that person? And maybe it might help those in our audience a little bit.
I think this one in particular, this transition from Everest to this UTMB buildup, this is one of the harder and slower transitions I've ever had. And I think there's two things. One is just the usual expectations versus reality. I think that it's way better to assume that things are going to be slower and harder and then have them feel better than vice versa. And it's hard not to compare to previous transitions and buildups. My January transition, like we said before, was like one of the best I've ever had. I was some of the best training I've ever had super early in the season. And setting the bar there is not realistic. So I think having that bar set appropriately where you kind of have some easy layups early, in those first few weeks or month of training, I think that's really important. And then for me, I think the big thing is just giving yourself enough time is the other really big thing. That committing to race at Leadville, I think with the information I had back in whenever that was, January or something, if I was thinking, I'll be off of Everest by May 10th, sure. Like, okay, you have 7 weeks or something, then that's fine. But when suddenly we're on the mountain on May 27th, it's like, okay, this is actually pretty soon. And so that I think created a lot of pressure. And that's literally, I wrote this down in my journal. It's like, whatever I do in the fall, after UTMB, I'll go over to the Himalaya. And then I was like, okay, no racing for like 2 months. Like at least don't commit to anything. Like best case scenario, if you get to November or December and you're feeling fantastic, cool, then sign up for something, find something that's cool. But I think having a race a couple months or even a few weeks after a break, I think unless you go into it with absolutely no expectations, it's just a fun thing, I think it sets you up to really overthink the training too early, which is a big problem. At least it is for me. I put a lot of pressure on myself early just because of that. I think really I should have, and it's funny, I remember talking to Connor about this back in like early June when I was in Massachusetts, and he was like, yeah, you definitely shouldn't do that race. That seems really dumb. And I wish I just listened to him and like just said, no, I'm not going to do it then, because I think then the next few weeks would have felt a lot less stressful. But I think that's a really big thing, is just making sure that you're giving yourself time to like ease back into it gently, and that it's not, you're not rushing back into something. So that would be my general takeaway, both for me from this transition and also for our audience is, give yourself that break, and then make sure that you kind of give yourself, I would say at least, 2 to 4 weeks of just getting back into the rhythm of training, feeling good with stuff, and then start to think about, okay, what race do I want to do? Or, early mid-season races, stuff like that. But give yourself at least 2 weeks, if not a month, to just kind of get your feet back under you.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Anything else you want to add then before we close out?
No, I think that's it. I will read us out. So thank you, everybody, for being here. This is our second season. We're super excited. As always, please send any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, hopes, dreams. You can send those to my email, ty@chasky.run, or DM me, Tyler C. Andrews, on Instagram. And remember, you can read my raw training logs. This is all multimedia. You can have that delivered to your inbox via Substack or at tylercandrews.com. Ty's Training is a Chasky media production and brought to you by the good folks at Chasky Endurance Collective, the world's leader in online coaching, travel, and community for endurance athletes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Ciao.